So this idea of synchronicity, who here is familiar with synchronicity? Oh, good. So what are you doing at this talk? You know all about it, right? Who's experienced synchronicity? Who's experienced synchronicity as central to their unfolding, to their awakening, to their healing, to their transformation? Yeah. Interesting. Interesting because we don't talk about it so much. Until now. As synchronicity is defined as two occurrences acausally connected. And what connects them is meaning. Meaning in the experience, in the subjective experience. So what I'm going to talk about a little today is some of my experiences of synchronicity and what this phenomenon might suggest and how possibly we might experience more synchronicities. If you're like me, you enjoy these moments. There's a delight and a joy and a revelatory quality to synchronistic phenomena. So if you're open to this possibility, I don't really know how we can increase the number of synchronicities, but if you're open to this possibility, that's something we can explore. So I remember the first occasion I experienced what I came later to know as a synchronicity. I was finishing a weekend of some indulgence at the age of 18 or 19. All the drugs had run out, and it was the Sunday evening. Normality was about to resume on the Monday morning. It was a sad moment. And my friend started to share a story about a mutual friend's father, and this mutual friend's father was an extraordinarily stern character, very aloof, not given to sharing emotion at all. And this story was how this guy, on discovering that there was an owl thought to be outside, went outside with some enthusiasm and, as I imagined it, sort of boyish glee, and started to try and summon this owl with this sort of tu-it-tu-woo, tu-it-tu-woo. Well, I guess that's how he did it. And this was just a funny story that we enjoyed, my friend and I, as he told this. And what was interesting was just a few moments later, this is in the middle of an evening in the middle of the city, a few moments later, an owl landed on the tree, maybe where that wire is, just 5 meters away. Now for my friend, this was an experience of no significance. It was just a coincidence. But for me, it had deep meaning. The only thing was, at the time, I had no idea what the meaning was. It just meant something. And for many years, it existed or operated as a large question mark over the top of all that I had taken to be true. I'd been really choosing from amongst accepted stories, either the Christian story or the science story. I was choosing from stories that existed within culture already. And here was this experience that was saying, there's something more. There's something more going on here than any of the stories you're familiar with. It took a number of years for this question mark to pull forth, develop, enhance a curiosity, a hunger for truth, evolved and developed and drove more and more action and behavior. Started, in many ways, this was the beginning of the path. So there was then 10 years or so of the usual It was interesting hearing the previous talk, a beautiful talk. It's a shame you weren't here to hear this wonderful sharing on the Trinity of consciousness and how it's so impossible to describe the path. So I can surmise it as being this sort of 10 years of intense practice and inquiry and various modes of inquiry, and one that was consistently and again guided by synchronistic phenomena, by these arisings. The second one I'd like to share with you that was the deepening of the journey was a few years ago now. I was 31 and I was running in the gym, running on one of those treadmills with the intention of becoming more healthy, becoming more fit. And I experienced an altered state of consciousness, tingling in my left hand. Not an altered state of consciousness that had any sort of desirable qualities to it. It was one that was problematic. And in attempting to get off the treadmill, I lost consciousness, for want of a better phrase, and fell to the floor. And I next recall sitting on the gym floor with a couple of individuals looking at me, very, very interested in what I'm about to do next. I discovered that I'd had a full-body convulsive seizure, hence their fascination, hence their interest. So I was taken to hospital and discovered that there was a lump in my brain. I recall the moment that the female doctor came in with a look on her face that said this was not news that she wanted to be giving a 31-year-old man. And yet, interestingly, in the moment that she said there is a lump in your brain, from that moment on, there was absolutely zero sense of there being any problem whatsoever. No issue, no stress, no suffering, no concern. Fascination, interest, very heightened curiosity, but no fear, no resistance, no suffering. And this was curious to me, right? I was aware this was maybe not a normal response to finding out that I might die in a few months, or rather, we all might die in a few months, finding out that my statistical chances of dying in the short term had just increased considerably, and who knows how that death might unfold. Yet there was this peace, this knowing that all was deeply, deeply well, including death, including debilitation, including whatever is going to be unfolding next. Aware that this was an atypical response, the mind questioned this. There was a sort of what's going on? Maybe there should be a different response happening here. And I got home, discharged from the hospital after a couple of days, and went to my journal. This seemed like a rather noteworthy event. All the dross and drivel that I've written in my journals over the years, the self-indulgent stuff, this seemed like an interesting occurrence, to say the least. And what happened when I went to the journal, I encountered what I had written 5 days before I was diagnosed. And the way that I came to write this quote, I read it in a book and experienced a visceral response. I experienced a bodily response to this quote, such that I wrote it in my journal with no wording about the story, no wording about the quote, nothing of what it meant to me, just the quote, and wrote nothing else for the next 5 days. The only time in my journal, in that journal, I did check that I'd gone more than a day without writing. So what that meant was getting home from the hospital, and here I open my journal. These are the first words I read, having been diagnosed with a brain tumor. These words: death is certain, its timing uncertain. So, what's important now. And I fell to my knees in a joyful, great, I can't describe the combination of emotions. It was a whispering of the unseen at such a timely moment, at such a convenient moment. I mean, if you had to rate how significant, how apt, how utterly on the ball that quote was, and it was recognized as significant 5 days before, and now the left brain that was doubting this piece, this knowing that all was well, was somehow reassured with this phenomena in the real world, in the world of form. So this quote has guided me since. This quote has been a moving force. What is important now? And one of the things I have fun doing around the world is reminding people that they die. Reminding you that you die. Of course, this quote is, I mean, we all know we don't die, right? We're all non-dual here, but we have this experience of leaving the body which we may want to pay some heed to. And this quote, of course, is as apt to everyone here, maybe not quite so timely, as it was for me then. Death is certain. Its timing uncertain. So, what is important now? Today has been a reminder. Yesterday was a reminder of what is important now. A reminder came to me a few hours ago. I've been experiencing, I thought the shadow work was complete a couple of years back. These last days I've been experiencing such an intensity of feeling, such an intensity of pain, such an intensity of fear, such an intensity of a guy who I thought I had left behind some time ago. And this was coming up in some intensity this morning. I thought, how perfect, I've got to give a talk this afternoon, how absolutely perfect. It's not a new experience, by the way, to have shit come up and then to have to present and to invite whatever wants to come through. So there was a history, a memory that this is not a problem, and yet this was still my experience. And walking to the car, for the first time, I actually thought I might plan a talk. That's how unsettled I was. It seemed like it might be an idea for the mind to know what was going to be said. So I was going to the car to do this. And I heard some music being played in the church. I don't know if the pianist is here. I don't think he is. And siren-like, this music drew me in to the church. It was just like a walking to the car and then off to the church. And this guy was playing the most exquisitely beautiful piano music. Julius, you got to hear some of this as well. And I sat down, and there before me was one of my favorite gurus, Jesus, with his heart open and exposed. And the tears flowed, and the remembrance, the answer to this question, what is important now for me to receive the love that is present here now, to receive the love into this place, into this pain, into this wound, to let it in, to allow it, to receive it. So love is the short answer, but this receptivity is the key movement. And synchronistic phenomena for me have been a reminder to receive this, a reminder of the something, a reminder of the something more than what we perceive typically with our senses. I mean, let us look at the implications of this. We are apparently here, and there is this world outside of us. I mean, we all know that to some extent or other, we all know that that's not quite how it is, but that's still how we're experiencing it. Even after non-dual realization, this is how it is experienced. There is a world out here and there's something here experiencing it. And in the synchronicity, in the arising of this synchronistic phenomena, something out there in the separation communicates instantaneously with that in here. It speaks in a way that says, I'm listening, I'm aware of you, I know what's going on. The number of times I've watched a movie, and the movie has spoken to the exact theme, the exact plot line of my little drama that was being experienced that day. The number of times I've been in tears on a plane, I'm surprised I'm not on some list as a sort of unstable person who should be checked at the border security. So I want to point to this capacity, to this function of the one thing to communicate with itself through events. And let us dwell or contemplate for a moment what that suggests. That all these molecules would go to the trouble of arranging themselves in such a way as at a perfect time in our unfolding speak to a particular question, a particular challenge, a particular difficulty. For me, it took the first couple of thousand before I really started to receive this and take it seriously. And the number of times it was like, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. How could I forget? How could I forget this love that is present? This love that is present. In the blurb, I always have this horrible moment when I'm going to do a talk at Sand. I read the blurb, the bio or whatever that I wrote 6 months ago, or in this case probably about 12 months ago, and go, I'm going to talk about what? I said what? But in that there was a lovely question. This wonderful sage, this wonderful mystic, Andrew? He's certainly not Andrew. His surname's Einstein. And for some reason, the first name has gone. You probably know the guy. You may have heard of him. Crazy hair and so on. Albert, that's the one. Thank you so much. Albert Einstein. He was a bit forgetful as well, I think. I'll just compare myself to one of the world's predominant geniuses. He asked or suggested that one of the most important questions humanity can ask is the universe friendly? Is the universe friendly? And I'm sure we've all experienced an absolute no to that, right? We've all experienced an absolute, no, it's not friendly, an absolute denial of the possibility of a friendliness that is indescribable. A friendliness that is indescribable. A love that is entirely beyond anything we can experience in relationship, anything we can experience with chocolate even, anything that we would typically experience in the human condition, in the human form, and yet somehow our nervous systems, these extraordinary vessels, can open and evolve and adapt and receive this love, this friendliness, this exquisite friendliness. And so in this moment, the invitation is, of course, as always, to receive this presence, to receive this love into the love that we are, into the presence that we are. This presence, looking out, looking in, having this exquisite experience of individuation. So there was a hook in the blurb, how we might experience more synchronicities in our life. And I believe that there is actually a simple way to experience more synchronicities. It's very much like if you wanted to experience more white cars. You start with the recognition, the belief, the knowing that white cars exist. You accept that that is true, or at least the possibility. You then intend to see more white cars. You make a decision. I am going to see more white cars. And then, when you see the white car, you experience some joy. You let this system know that this is appreciated, that this is delightful, that I'm enjoying seeing this white car. Ooh, it worked. I wanted to see white cars, and there one is. How wonderful. Very similar process with synchronistic phenomena. The more we recognize and receive and allow this experience to be the message that it is, allow it to be that whispering from the unseen, the more this totality, this unity that is our being, says, okay, that Will guy seems to be kind of liking these synchronicities. That seems to be working quite well. It's as if we shall send some more his way. In my book, there's a few available at the back of the room. I think Marie Claire must be sitting on them right now. It looks a little bit uncomfortable. There's a chapter that shares some of the more exquisite synchronicities that have arisen in my experience, and some of the exquisitely precise ways the owl has continued, this symbol of death in some cultures, this symbol of transformation, this symbol of wisdom has come back and again and again and again and again. One I'll just share briefly because it's so pertinent to this process of working with that which is not bliss, working with that darkness, the shadow, the parts of ourselves that we have disowned, the parts of ourselves that we have not wanted to feel. I was just finishing this chapter on the synchronistic phenomena, on the guidance that is available to us all, the guidance that is available in form to inform our experience, our path, our unfolding. And as I was sharing this completion, this chapter being written, with my father, driving away from the village in his car, in the middle of the day, a white owl flew in front of the car. A week later, I was driving in the opposite direction with my mother, coming back into the village. Like the symbolism couldn't even get more if you actually tried to create one. And I was quoting a line from Haruki Murakami's book, IQ 84, about how the owl is a communicator from the unseen, the guardian of the woods, coming from the darkness to point us to what we need to look at in the darkness. And I mentioned how this was as part of a conversation about the owls and Dad's car and so on. And in that moment, an owl flew out of the woods in front of the car. And I just, it's just so exquisite that life would present itself in this way. And the thought that arose at the time, this indicates that there might be some stuff coming up from the shadows over the next while. I think I was hoping that I'd be done by now, but the process seems to be having its own schedule, and I'm surrendering to that. And speaking of schedules, I know we have 5 minutes left, and I'd like there to be some opportunity for sharing or questions or comments, whatever there might be, either on whatever comes to mind, but the synchronistic phenomena or this receptivity, this receiving, this allowing of love presence.